This video and all of its contents, including any opinions expressed by the narrator, are strictly for entertainment purposes only and is not intended in any way as a substitute for professional services and consultation from a licensed therapist, doctor, attorney, or other licensed professional service provider. Each person must make their own life decisions, and those decisions are theirs. Welcome back to Find Your Alpha. I'm back at you this week with another fantastic video story, and I'm going to warn you, this one's a little crazy, so let's get right into it. The title of the story is My Wife Was a Kept Woman for the Doctor She Worked For. She is now remorseful and regrets her actions. And here's his original post. He starts off and he says, I need the help of people to see me through this as I feel I am alone. I want to say now that English is not my first language, so bear with any mistakes. He says, I am 29 and my wife is also 29. I'll name us Hugo and Valentina. We met about 8 years ago when I went to the specialist doctor she works for. She was the office person there. She did all the scheduling and paperwork when you went in and out. I thought she was nice and very handsome and healthy looking. I was taken away with her right up front. That's going to be a problem because you can already see that he's looking at her in a different light. He said, I asked her if she had a man and she said no. So I asked her to go to coffee and she declined but was polite. I said, okay, sorry for asking, and she said that was all right, no problem, and thank you for asking me, kind sir. I had to go back to that specialist doctor 3 more times over the next 5 weeks. The next time I went, I was friendly when I entered and checked out, but did not say much to her because I had embarrassment from the first meeting. I noticed, though, she tried to make conversation with me and to get me to talk to her, but I didn't as I kind of felt like a foolish man with embarrassment. The next time I went, she greeted me warmly and asked how my weekend was and what I did for fun. She said she was all alone at home and just read a novel all weekend. I told her I went to the gym and to the new auto show both days. She then asked me a lot of questions about my workout and about the cars I like. I talked to her out at the desk for a long time until I was called back to see the doctor. When I left, she was on the phone with a customer patient, so the nurse lady checked me out. But before I left the office, Valentina put her hand over the phone receiver and told me, goodbye, Hugo. See you next time. I thought, this girl is now seeming to have interest in me for some reason. It was all flattering and such, but I thought, I wonder why now? Why did she have this heart changing so quick? The next time I went in, it was my last visit there. It was busy when I walked in, and Valentina was helping 3 of us patients at the same time at the desk, but she smiled at me with eyes that were bright. When I left, I told her I was all done there and would not have to come back. Valentina told me she was glad for me, but was sad because she wouldn't see me again. I said goodbye and walked out the door, and as I was waiting for the elevator in the hall, Valentina came up behind me and said she would like to go for coffee sometime if I still wanted to. I was taken by this boldness and said yes. She gave me her digits and I put them in my phone and sent her a text so she had my digits too. I had a wonderful feeling in my body after leaving that building, he says. I wonder what kind of feeling he had. 2 days following, on Saturday, we met for coffee at a shop in the village area. We enjoyed each other's company, and I could sense she was really feeling it for me, and I know I absolutely was. We stayed there and talked for over 90 minutes, and then went out and walked through the streets and grabbed a pastry to share on a bench. There Valentina invited me to dinner at her place. I accepted and she kissed me on the cheek when we parted. I was quite happy. I mean, the day went magnificent, but she being the one who kissed first was pleasant but surprising. So that night I went to her place for dinner and could not believe it. She lived in a beautiful flat in the most costly part of town. I thought now, wow, how does this girl live in such a place as an office worker in medical? He says with three question marks. Now that's a big red flag. Now, it may not be anything. Maybe her family's rich and they put her up in that apartment, but you got to dig into that a little bit more to find out how she can afford that. She prepared great food and we enjoyed ourselves over dinner and a couple glasses of wine. After dinner, we were in the sitting room listening to music and talking, and Valentina started kissing me and made it clear to me right there that I was the one she wanted that evening. I was very surprised at this and thought to myself, this isn't what I signed up for. At least not that night so quick in one day. Yes, that is a big red flag because you just really met this woman. She just met you and you went on your first date, where you walked around town for a little bit and talked for like 90 minutes, and now all of a sudden she wants you that night. Sounds good, guys, but you always have to step back and say, I wonder what's going on here. If it's just a hookup, that's a different situation. But if you're thinking about a relationship with this woman and she's doing this, you got to question it. She calmed down and we embraced and just talked the rest of the night. But she made it known to me that she was ready for being physical when I was ready to take that step. I left there feeling really good about my esteem, but I had a little doubt as I thought this all seems a little bit too good to be happening after just a short time together. Yes, it does. Well, we were intimate the next time out together. From there, we were steady as a couple and got engaged for matrimony 8 months later, and then married the following summer after being a couple for 16 months. Now, I put a thumbs down there because I think that's rushing it. Now, I'm going to get feedback from guys out there that are going to tell me, oh, I met my wife and we got married 90 days later and we've been married for 40 years. Yes, those kind of situations can happen. But oftentimes, most oftentimes, what I see when people rush into marriage, there always seems to be big problems. So my advice is don't get married, but if you do, don't rush into it. After marriage, we bought a modest but very nice home in a good part of the city. There we conceived our first child, a daughter, who was born 10 months later, and our second child, also a daughter, born the next year. Everything was very great in our marriage life. Extreme love for each other, passion that was never a dull moment, and the most beautiful and loving children. Also, with my salary and Valentina's salary, we had our home more than half paid after 5 years. I could not have been more happy if I had written this book myself, but sometimes things are not as they appear on paper. One day at work, I got a call from a young woman who said she was the daughter of the doctor Valentina works for. She said she and her sister wanted to speak with me urgently, and it's important. I asked if something was wrong with my Valentina, and she said no, health wasn't a problem here. But there was something they felt that I needed to know, and don't tell Valentina. Okay, I thought, what's up here? So I agreed to meet with them at a cafe the following afternoon as I was very busy the day she called. So I get to the cafe and there are these two young ladies sitting at a corner table. I notice they are progressive girls who attend university with dyed hair, face piercings, and tattoos. Okay, that's not my cup to drink. I think he meant that's not my cup of tea. But each person makes their own decisions, right? I bought them a coffee and we started speaking. I asked, why do you ladies want to talk to me? They wasted no time, and the older girl tells me their father, the doctor, has been having an affair with my wife Valentina for years, many years. I had anger and told them both to hold things right there, that I would not tolerate them soiling my wife's honor in this manner, and I got up to leave the establishment. Then the younger girl told me to please wait, sir. She said she had something she wanted to show me. She pulls up a video clip on her phone of my Valentina and the doctor without any clothes having relations. I put my hand over the phone and told her to get that out of my sight, and I didn't believe it. The girls told me, "Sir, this is not fiction." They said they had videos dating all the way back 9 years. I excused myself and went outside to my vehicle and started to cry. But then composure returned and I went back into the shop. I asked them what the date of the video was, and it was from before I met Valentina. I got hope hearing that, and then asked what is the most recent video. The younger girl said the most recent video was from 15 months ago. So this happened during the marriage. I asked her to show it to me, and she did. It was Valentina accepting the doctor through another part of the body for which she and I never explored. Oh boy. Seeing that, I told the girls I had to leave and would be back in touch with them. I drove to the church parking lot nearby and sat there in my auto crying for a long while. Then I got myself together and went home. I tried to be normal, but Valentina and my girls noticed I was not level. I got through the evening, and the next day I told Valentina I wanted to take her to dinner that night and to arrange for the daughters to be watched by her parents. She was happy about this and looked forward to our evening. That day at work, I called the doctor's daughter, who first reached out to me and asked if I could get the videos. She said they were too big to text or mail to me, but she would put them on a drive and give me the links to the drive where I could access them and play them on my phone or computer. She sent me the links and I did something I shouldn't have. I started watching them. I became so upset after watching just 2 of them that I had to leave work and went home to watch the rest. What I saw will never leave my mind and was total sickness. To my surprise, Valentina came home just after noon and was not in her uniform. She was taken away at seeing me home, and I was taken away seeing her there. She asked me why I was there, and I told her to come with me to the bedroom as I had something to show her. From our computer, I pull up one of the videos and play it for her. She right away started crying and ran onto the porch. I go out there and she tries to embrace me, but I keep her away and ask her to explain this. She keeps crying and I yelled at her to explain herself. All she could say is she didn't know. I asked, "What do you mean you didn't know?" She said she didn't know why she did what she did, but she has great shame and total remorsefulness for her actions. She couldn't speak anymore from crying, so I left her alone at the house and went out for a long drive. I drove down the expressway, ignoring her attempts to reach me. Finally, after driving an hour, I answered her call and she asked me to come back. I said I would only go back if she explained everything to me from the start, and she agreed to that. So I drove back home, which took nearly 2 hours because of work traffic. Okay, here is the hard part for me. Valentina explained that she has been having relations with the doctor ever since 2 months after she worked there. She said at first she was in love with him, but then it became just a physical thing. Yes, she liked it. She said the doctor encouraged her to date me as a cover for their affair, and she continued to have full physical relations while we were dating. So this doctor is an absolute scum. He's an absolute dog. But this woman was an adult and she went along with it. So she's just as guilty, if not more guilty, because she's the one who's married to the OP. She said she fell in love with me, and that made the doctor mad, and he was going to fire her. So she continued having full relations with him until we got engaged. She said since that time, she has only done things one way with the monster doctor, and always with protection, and has never done anything with her reproductive or oral parts since except with me. I ask you, does this even matter? No, it doesn't matter because what she was doing with him was totally disgusting. She should only be doing that with you. And do you really believe her that that's all she was doing? I, for one, don't. You can't believe anything she's saying. I asked her if she was still having these sick relations with this man, and she said no. They ended completely 13 months ago. Valentina said even before they stopped completely, they only had physical relations 3 times during the last 2 years of their affair. She then told me she had been let go from her job 2 weeks ago, as was his 2 nurse assistants, as the doctor shut down his practice. Valentina said he is paying her and the nurses for 6 more weeks, but then she will get no further income from him. Since getting fired, she has been leaving home in the morning in her uniform, but then comes back home after I leave to change clothes and go out to look for jobs. So she's being deceptive there as well. She said she was offered a job just a kilometer from home, but the pay is less than half of what she was making before. Valentina begged for forgiveness, saying she was done with the doctor forever and away from his evil curse. She said she knows she did wrong and will be a totally dedicated wife to me for the rest of her life. She asked me if I was completely satisfied with her before finding this terrible news out. And I said, yes, of course I was, but I didn't know what you were doing with the doctor under my nose. She said she has a sickness and wants to be cured of it and asked if I would go with her to see a mind counselor. I told her no, I don't need to see a quack, he says. But she should see a quack as she definitely has major problems beyond what I've ever heard one to have. Valentina then said she has thought about everything and that if I divorce and force the sale of our home, she will be forced into low rent housing. She asked if I really wanted to see our daughters live like that. See, she's trying to guilt him here. I told her, of course I don't, but I can't be married to her. I could never be married to a bad woman like that who used her body for money like a common street woman. Valentina begged me not to tell anyone yet. She said, let's just give it a few weeks to see if I settle down. She said if I'm still upset after that and can't go on with her, then she will give a full written confession of her indiscretions, tell everyone in our family, and give me a no strings divorce if I want. Okay, so now it's been 5 days since all this happened, and I can't live with myself. Very little sleep, no appetite, and I'm in a bad mood all the time, and it's taking twice as long to do my work now. I can't go on like this much more. What advice do you have for a man in my shoes? I don't want to be without my daughters even for just one day. I don't want them to have to live part of the time in a lower rent district where there is more crime and bad influences of people. Last of all, and he says this in capital letters, I do not want to be married to my wife. What are your suggestions, Hugo? So that's the end of his original post. And now we're going to take a look at a few responses he got back from the community. But before we do that, I want to remind you, if you're liking what you've heard so far, hit that like button. That will help get this video seen by men and women across the planet. Now, let's take a look at some of those responses. The first one is from a guy. He says, you first need to get full STD testing, then DNA test your kids, get a good lawyer, and divorce this woman. I really feel bad for you and your daughters, but you will get through this and you will come out stronger in the long run. You need to sever ties with her or you will live in misery and with regret for the rest of your life. You're young and have many good years ahead. Yeah, the guy's only 29, remember that. Next, this response is from a woman. She says, I am so sorry to hear about your situation and have said a prayer for you and your daughters. This is a tough decision on your part, as I can understand you not wanting to be separated from your kids even for a day. Yeah, that does make it tough, man, because In a divorce, you know, as a man, you're likely never, very rarely, let's say, going to get full custody. And at best, you're going to get 50-50 custody. So that means you're going to not see your kids for 50% of the time, which is tough. I feel the same way, this woman says. That all said, you need to get away from your wife, for what she did will eat away at you daily. My husband cheated, and I tried staying with him for the kids, but just couldn't do it. Good luck. So this woman was cheated on. She tried to stick it out, and she found out she couldn't do it either. And I don't blame her. She needed to get rid of that guy, just like this guy needs to get rid of his wife. Next, we have another response from a woman. She says, I ask everyone on here to hear me out before you start berating me. Hugo, your wife is a terrible person for what she did. But people can redeem themselves, as it says in the good book. She realizes what she did was wrong, accepts accountability, and is seeking treatment. If I were you, I would see how she responds to therapy and then make your decision. You may be able to rebuild your marriage better than it was before. No, he will never be able to rebuild his marriage to better than it was before. It will never be better than it was before. The marriage really is over. And finally, we've got another response from a guy. He says, my friend, I was you 9 years ago with my ex-wife. Thankfully, we didn't have any children, but were in the process of trying when I found out that she had been having an affair with her married boss for years before we were married, and the affair continued right up until the day I caught them. I was devastated and nearly had a nervous breakdown, but I've come through, and you can too. Wow. These stories like this are really disturbing, man. And now he's got a series of updates. The first one was from 18 days after the original post. He says, I have an update for everyone who's been waiting patiently for my response. I went to get a disease check and I am clear of all STDs. No problems there. I next took my girls and got the DNA tracing done, and it came back that I was over 99% sure I was the father. I already knew this as they both looked just like me. I've also gone out and retained a litigator. Now, what he's talking about there is an attorney, but I've not yet decided on whether to file for divorce from Valentina. He is advising me on how to proceed, whether I divorce or not. It's expensive, but it is worth the investment. One thing he recommended is to have Valentina give a full written confession with complete details now, as a requirement for me staying at least temporarily. I approached Valentina on this and she agreed to do it, no problem. I also got copies of each of the videos from the doctor's daughters and have those. My representative said we now have all the evidence we need to prove infidelity in the event my wife tries to lie about it if I file for divorce. I'm still living at the house, and it's been hard putting up a false face for everyone. Valentina is sleeping in the guest room we have, and for now our situation will be secret from everyone. I can't stand to look at her, and she has agreed to keep a distance from me when the girls are not with us, and so far she's been good about it. She says I can take as much time as I want, and she will be there for me whatever I decide. She says she's not going anywhere, and she loves me only. He says, yeah, right. I want to divorce now, but I don't have a solution to being able to see my girls every day and for how I can keep them living in this good neighborhood. That is my biggest worry of why I haven't gone through with it. I'm racking my brains out trying to find the right solution to this problem. Any ideas? My ears are open to all suggestions. Hugo. So that was his interim update, and now he comes back with a final update. And this final update took place 9 months after that last update he just gave us. He says, thank you all. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I appreciate all the advice and the well wishes each of you have given me through this terrible process. I found a good solution to keep my kids in a good section of town and still be able to see them as much as I want. Let me now explain. My in-laws are wonderful people. I wish Valentina had their morals, but she doesn't. They've lived in the same house for 34 years since they got married at age 18. Yes, that's right, 18. They had and still have much love for each other. They live in an area that was once very nice, but over the past few years, the government has been settling immigrants in their neighborhood. I have no issues with immigrants settling in our country, but most of the people the government has put there are young, unemployed men who don't speak the language. Since then, crime has gone up terribly, and many of the residents are afraid to walk on the streets of town. Now, not all of these men are dangerous, but there are some real bad apples there. Now, let me explain how this solved my situation. After a month of living with Valentina after finding out about her and the doctor, I told her it was time to tell our parents. She agreed but was sad and had very much embarrassment and remorse of her actions. We told my parents on the phone and they were very sad about this whole ordeal. We then went over to her parents' house and they were just completely distraught and cried with many tears. A few weeks went by and I made my mind up that I couldn't live like that with Valentina anymore and I needed to get the divorce. But I didn't have a housing solution for my kids. Then I had an idea that was great. What if my in-laws sold their house and bought out my half of our house and moved in with Valentina? This way my girls could still live in the house and I could visit often, even every day. I pitched this idea to them and they were all for it. But Valentina rejected it and was sad because I wanted to divorce. She begged me for days, but I said no. I explained to her this is a great solution and gets her parents out of a bad area and lets our girls and her live in the wonderful home we built. Valentina finally agreed and my in-laws sold their home to the government for a road widening. I have since moved into a flat just 1.5 kilometers from our house, and I've given my litigator the approval to file for the divorce. It's going to take 5 more months to get completed, but my mind is now at ease. I have a solution for my girls and in-laws, and I now have a plan myself. My life is good again, and my mind has almost returned to normalcy. I would now like to answer a few questions. First, the doctor's daughters are actually good people, even though they don't look like it, he says. Their lifestyles are not for me, but everyone is free to do what they want, right? They told me that their dad was mentally abusive to their mother throughout their entire marriage and was totally absent from their lives. When they got older, they begged their mom to leave him, but she didn't, even though she was miserable. I've never met the doctor's wife, but the daughters tell me she is a wonderful woman. She filed for divorce from the doctor and it was already final. The daughters tell me she is doing well now on her own and is happy for the first time they ever remember. As for the doctor, the daughters ruined his reputation on social media and pressured the hospital system to get rid of him. That's why he shut down suddenly and let go all his employees. It was all due to his daughter's actions. Good for the daughters. They hate him and want nothing to do with him. As a result, they also have a general disdain for men because of the bad example he set. I told them that not all men are terrible humans like their father. They told me they realize that now and are starting to be more open to having men in their lives. Also, the daughters told me that after Valentina and the doctor stopped having regular relations, he started up with a young woman at the hospital and with a married patient of his. This is a big no-no for doctors in this country, and as such, it is unlikely that he will ever be able to restart his practice and may have to move internationally. He has since moved out of the metro area and lives in an apartment. He lost his business, his reputation, his wife, and his daughters. I should have suspected something was wrong when I saw that Valentina's salary was more than twice that of what a normal person gets paid for that kind of work. But I thought she must be doing a good job. Yeah, she was really doing a good job. You just didn't know what kind of job she was doing. He says, "My God, I wish none of this ever happened and I still had my wife in my life as I thought she once was, but that's not possible. So, with everything into consideration, life is good for me, my girls, my in-laws, and yes, for Valentina, even though I will never be her man again. I am at peace now and once again look forward to getting up in the morning. Hugo." So that's his story. And overall, I think the guy handled this as best he could. He was really concerned about the welfare of his kids, which I don't blame him. When you're a parent like that, that has to be your number one priority. But once he got that settled, he quickly took action and divorced this woman. Now, the issue he's going to have here is being able to keep that separation with his ex-wife. He lives just a kilometer and a half, like he said, from his house. He's going to be over there all the time visiting with them, which I don't blame him. You know, he wants to see his kids all the time. But his soon-to-be ex-wife is going to be there too, which means there's a chance she could reel him back in. This is a tough situation, so he has to be very cautious. So I hope at some time in the future, this guy comes back and gives us an update on how things are going for him, and hopefully he stays the course. So let's take a look at now what I think are the morals of the story. Number one, human nature, specifically in this case, female nature, is the same no matter what the culture. You can tell this guy lives in another country. Maybe it's in Europe, maybe it's in South America, who knows? But it's obviously a different culture, but you can see female nature is the same all over the world. Next, many men make the mistake of rushing into marriage without thinking through what happens if it fails. You know, the divorce rate is well over 50%. So if you just go into marriage thinking, oh, you know what, it's going to be different with me, that's very stupid, because you should be thinking, okay, if I'm going to take this step, what happens if it goes left of center and I end up getting a divorce? What's going to happen to me? What's going to happen to my finances? And most importantly, like in this guy's case, what's going to happen to my kids? Next, never stay in a miserable relationship. Look what happened to this doctor's wife. She stuck it out with him for years, and the daughter said she was always miserable. They never remembered her being happy until now she's divorced from him. So why stay in a miserable relationship? It doesn't make any sense. Next, you can't trust anything a cheater says about any subject. This woman, in this case, had been lying to this guy ever since they met and continued to lie all the way through until he caught her and confronted her. Next, fathers are very influential in the lives of their children. So if you have kids, be present and set a good example for them. Don't be like this doctor and be, mentally abusive to your spouse, and also not being present for your kids, because look what happened to his daughters. They're rebelling now. They're in college and they're doing all these crazy things to themselves, and they don't like men. That's because they look at all men like their father, and not all men are like their father. If you're a man with children, you got to make sure that you are present in their lives and you set a good example for them. I can't stress that enough. And finally, as I say on all these stories, once cheating has occurred, it is always best to immediately end the relationship and move forward with your life in a positive way. So those are my thoughts on this, and now I want to hear from you. What did you think of this story and how this guy handled the situation? Would you have done something different, or do you think he did a good job here? Also, if you've ever experienced something like this, tell us about it in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. Also, be sure to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to this channel, and I will talk to you